Hi guys, thanks for joining me. Before I show the final reveal of the Chevy truck that I've built, the 172nd IBG models World War II Chevy truck that you may recall I'm doing as a replica of one of the trucks that my granddad drove during World War II. I thought I'd show you his soldier's release book. So there's his surname. Mayo, initials D, and that's his army number T146645990. And if we have a look inside, it gives some information about him. His date of birth, 5th of the 7th, 25, you can just see there, and he wasn't married at the time. And then there's a lot of, this thing's falling apart, but there's a lot of blank pages. So it would appear that my granddad went back to Chevy Street on the 18th of July 1947. And his commanding officer had this to say about him. This man has been employed as driver. He is a first-class driver and has made ample experience on all types of vehicles, including heavy goods vehicles. He also has a very pleasing personality, and his military conduct up there was excellent. So there we go. So one last thing to show you before again I show you the truck. So this is the cap badge for Royal Army Service Corps. This is not my granddad's. This I found in an antique shop last year, and decided I wanted it because it would have been the type that my granddad would have wore. So I should really put that with the build. In fact, I'll try and do that next to it. So I'll show you the build now. So here it is. Here's the finished build. The number 7 represents the tonnage that included, I believe, the vehicle and its heaviest cargo. So they had some idea of what bridges it could manage, whether some were too weak for this vehicle to go over at any one time. I did find out one or two things from the photos. The first thing is, which I'm pretty chuffed about, is that there's a symbol on the front bumper, and it's a black square with 2 white keys crossed over each other, and that was the symbol for the 2nd Infantry Division. So basically my granddad was driving trucks for the 2nd Infantry Division in Burma. I think I mentioned before that although trained Royal Army Service Corps, he could then be allocated to any of the regiments to drive supply trucks or troop transport. And yeah, I found that on the photo. I also found the registration of the vehicle, but it was that indistinct that really in 172nd you wouldn't be able to make it out. So I decided not to put anything on the front of the vehicle. Something I've done slightly different with this. There's no varnish on this at all. I painted it the dirty olive drab that they suggested, and then I did as you recall, I did the canvas in the khaki from Vallejo, but then over the khaki I put Reikland flesh shade to give it the weathering, and then I kind of dry brushed and picked out again back in khaki the pronounced parts on the canvas where the frame was showing through. On the green areas, I did a dry brush of olive drab, but added some yellow to it because I kept, and it was quite a heavy dry brush in the end, because I kept adding the yellow and it just wasn't being distinct enough. So I had to go quite heavy with the yellow, and did the dry brushing on the green areas. Because I wasn't putting any decals on, and again I didn't see any stars on the sides of the cab and I have seen photos of British trucks without the stars on the side. So because I wasn't doing any decals, I thought, right, I'm just going to go straight to the weathering, and I did that with MIG dusting powders. They do like a sand. I don't know, it's Vietnam Earth actually, and I just plastered the kit in that all over, and then taking cotton buds, cotton bud tips, or whatever you call them. I just wiped the excess off, and even dampened it slightly to take some of it off if I thought it was too much. So this was an enjoyable build, obviously quite personal really, for the obvious reasons of doing it because of my granddad. And to finish off, I'll just give you one last story from him. And it was actually one from the early days of him being part of the Royal Army Service Corps. So he passed his basic training as an infantryman, and I assume he must have passed his driving as well, because they then had to learn how to navigate. And so they did a night exercise where there was the guys from Royal Army Service Corps who passed at the same time were all given a truck and given a map, and then let loose from Yorkshire, and they'd got to get to somewhere else. So my granddad's driving down this country lane in Yorkshire, and he comes to a crossroads. So he pulls the truck over to one side, gets his little flashlight out, and he's looking at his map, and he's like looking directly at the crossroads, yeah. And he says that from the opposite direction comes another truck. It stops, and it turns. Then after a while, it turns left. No sooner than that one got out of sight, a third truck turns up, and it's coming from the right, and it actually turns left to go past my granddad. And I think he says in all there was about 4 or 5 trucks that came to this crossroads, and he just watched them, and he was laughing his socks off because none of them knew which direction they were supposed to be going, and all of them practically took different routes. He made a point though of not telling me whether he got to the destination or not. He just told me about this this night exercise that which he found very funny. So anyway, guys, that's the end of the build, and thanks Pappy for running the Chevy Truck Month. Appreciate it. This is the first truck month that I've been involved in, so I'm quite glad to have got off the mark with that as well. I'd also like to thank everybody for your kind comments and support whilst doing this build. Really appreciate it. This now will go on my shelf along with the cap badge, and just be something to remind me of Grandad and his service for this country during World War II. Thanks ever so much, guys, and I'll catch up with you soon.